Hello and welcome to the RIA Tech Talk Podcast, brought to you by RIA WorkSpace. I'm Todd DeRoca, and alongside of me is, as always, Mr. Co-Pilot, Mr. David Kakish. I know he's going to say, "Don't call me Mr." So I'll just call him David. And together we're on a mission to simplify the complex world of technology for RIAs like yours. Now, in this podcast, we'll be your tech guides breaking down those ever-confusing tech topics into plain old English for you. So join us on each episode as we dive into the latest tech trends, share our expert insights, and help you navigate the ever-changing world of RIA technology. And so today, David, we are talking about remote versus on-site IT support and what is the right choice for your RIA. And so I got a couple of FAQs, frequently asked questions here that we get most often. And so David, I'm going to kind of dive right into those. You all set for that?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, listen, Todd, good to talk to you. And you're right. Every time you say Mister, I look behind me and I look for my dad. I guess before you start asking the questions, I do want to put it out there that we work with a lot of RIAs nationwide. Most of the RIAs we work with are between 5 and 25 employees, regardless of assets under management. So we don't work with a lot of, let's just say, solo advisors or RIAs, with 100 plus employees and so on. And so, for the sake of today, think of, I don't know, Todd Private Wealth or, David's Private Wealth, an RIA with 9, 10 employees or something like that. That's kind of the typical client that we're talking about, because I think that's very relevant because, again, there's a lot of solo RIAs. That's not really who we work with a lot. And, there are some RIAs that are very large, and that's not who we're working with. Think if you're an RIA with approximately 5 to 25 employees, regardless of AUM, that's who we're talking to, and that's who this is really geared towards. So, okay.
Got it. All right. Sounds good. So let's start with, is on-site support needed for most of the RIAs out there?
So Todd, I guess let me ask you this. You're not an RIA, right? But
Nope.
what would your thought process be when you ask that question?
I always say if I can get the IT guy right down the hall, I'd rather have him on site. But if it's cheaper and I can still get the same level of service from somebody who's in Chicago or Austin, then I'll do it. I'll do the remote one. So that's kind of two, both sides of the coin there, but yeah.
Yeah. So it's really interesting because a lot of time, so we're based out of Chicago, but we work with clients nationwide, and we do have the ability to provide on-site support, when and if it is needed. And typically the way we do that for our clients is, let's just say, we work with a client, Austin, right? You're in Austin, right? Let's just say, Todd's Private Wealth is in Austin. You've got 10 employees. If you want us to be on site, we can set it up so that we're on site twice a month. Let's just say the first and the third Tuesday of every month for a half a day. We have a network of vetted partners, and so in your local market, we'll have somebody that does that. What happened, and the landscape has really changed in the last 5 years, and especially after the pandemic, is that people are working remotely. Even the ones that are working in the office don't have on-site servers anymore. And so in order for me to help you with a challenge that you have, let's just say your email, I don't need to access a server that's in your closet because you don't have that server in your closet anymore, right?
Right.
And so what's really interesting is, even though we offer both plans, our flagship plan is the first plan without the on-site support, because people look at the pricing and they're like, yeah, no, it's okay. We don't want to pay an extra, $1,200 a month to have somebody sitting here, twice a month. And from our perspective too, a lot of times when that person is sitting in your office twice a month for a half a day, they're usually twiddling their thumbs because all that stuff is already taken care of. So you probably don't need it. And and a lot of times when I talk to an RIA that's already working with a local provider in their local market, and usually they're contacting me or us because they're frustrated with that local provider. I ask them, like, hey, in the last 2 years, how many times were they on site? Oh, wow. You know what? They're a 15-minute drive. They haven't been on site a single time, in the last 2 years. Right. So that's very common. And what's happened is, again, I think the main driver for that is a lot of the servers and the infrastructure is no longer sitting in your office. it's
Hmm.
sitting at a data center, it's sitting at Microsoft or Redtail or, Orion or Schwab or, whoever that is. And so the only infrastructure you have in your office is a computer, a network firewall, and then a wireless access point, and that's about it. And that's typically, what's sitting out there. So
Is there any like major disaster recovery that would require you to, let's say they do go remote, but then you've got to find somebody there. What kind of examples, or do you have any stories of like, well, this is the only reason why we'd really send somebody physically? It was because of, a fire, literal fire, or things like that.
yeah.
Anything like that ever?
Well, it's really interesting because on the previous, literally right before this call, I was talking to a prospect. They're based out of Portland, and
Hmm.
and he was telling me, he's like, "Hey, look, we want to make sure we have business continuity in place because there's a law firm and we had a storm, and this law firm, they
Uh-huh.
couldn't work for a week, right?" And he's
Wow.
like, "We don't want to have that. We're five people, but we don't want to have that if that happens." And I go, "No, no, no, it's all built in, right? Our clients, they can be as productive in the office as they are at home. And even if their whole office is wiped out for whatever reason, right? They can work from home. They can, go to a hotel and work, and they can be fully productive, right? They might be missing their setup with, four monitors in the office,
Yeah.
whatever that
Yeah.
is, but still you've got your computer, you can be up and running, you can be productive, and do that. And so, here's, so in after so many years of doing this, the biggest one where people want to, they want the on-site support, it's usually two reasons, right? They've got 20 employees and it's just part of their culture to have an IT person in the office. And so
Hmm.
that's where we have somebody that's sitting in the office twice a month. That, again, that's just, hey, we want you to, come and look at our conference room or this or that, right? But again, those tend to be RIAs with 20 plus employees.
Right.
So that's number one. And the other scenario where there is on-site support is like they're opening up another branch office, let's say in Phoenix, right? And they're, they want it to be ready for, five employees that are going to work out of that office. They just want somebody to kind of plug everything in and get it up and running. And typically that's like, a half a day or a full day because we already pre-configure everything remotely. And the person that's on site is just kind of plugging in the internet and the firewall and the wireless access point. So those are really the two main reasons, we ever do anything on site.
Hmm.
But yeah, that's so the answer, this is a long answer saying you don't need on-site support because you don't have all the IT infrastructure, excuse
Yeah.
me, anymore.
Yeah. So let me go back to you made a point about if somebody was opening a new office or, or there's new hardware. So does if I'm opening up that new office for 5 and 10 employees and I have all these brand new pieces of hardware that may be both Apple and, a Dell or something,
Yeah.
do I need somebody on site there? Is that better than a remote, or are they both kind of the same?
No, you don't. Let me tell you how we do it sort of. I mean, you can, right? Like
Hmm.
it's optional, but anytime you have somebody that's on site, right, there are fees that are associated with it. So
Sure.
here's how we do that, right? Um, Typically, again, let's go Phoenix. You're gonna open up an office and you're gonna have, five employees that you're supporting in your Phoenix, office, right? There's the network infrastructure that you're gonna need, and then there's the computer infrastructure for the user, for the employee. The network infrastructure that you're going to need in that office is going to be number one, a network firewall. Number two, it's going to be a switch. And number three,
Hmm.
it's going to be a wireless access point.
Got it.
That's it. And those, we pre-configure all those things remotely. And then in order for us to have that up and running, if you want us to be on site, great. It's a half a day or a full day. We bill you for it, and we'll have a vetted partner be on site to plug everything in. Most of our clients, they already have somebody in that market. And so what will happen is, let's just say Mary is the office manager, right? We'll walk her through where to plug everything in, and then she's up and running. And that's what most of them end up doing. But there is 10 to 20% that say, no, let's just have somebody here on site to kind of plug that. So that's the network infrastructure. So Todd, I'll pause there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, no, that does. I'm thinking about the office manager, Mary. If somebody said, "Hey, can you go do this technical thing?" I can just see that person, whether it's, Mary or Marcus, they're like, "Oh God, what do I have to do? Like technical stuff. This is not in my." But it
Yeah,
sounds
yeah.
like, yeah, you
So,
can,
so
you got,
here we'll ask her like, hey, where's the plug coming in from Comcast or from the internet?
there
You
you go.
plug that into the firewall, right? Here's the switch, plug this into the firewall, and then here's this, plug it into the wireless access point. Those are kind of like the three main things we ask him or her to do. But
Yeah.
again, if Mary or Marcus doesn't want to do that, no problem. We
Yeah.
have the ability to do it. So we're
All
not,
right.
we're to be fair, we're not asking him to configure the wireless access point on the firewall.
Yeah.
I just want to put
Yeah.
that out there.
Yeah. So when it comes to, all this remote stuff, you've got Microsoft and other cloud-based apps. Is a remote support, is somebody remote supporting me enough? Or like, for example, if I had, some big technical cloud-based software, some investment tool or even some CRM, can a remote support be enough? Or
Yeah.
do I need somebody there too?
Yeah, it's a great question. Let's use Salesforce or Orion as a
Yeah, there you
prime,
go.
right? Those are
Yeah.
very specific applications for the wealth management industry. Well, guess what? Salesforce and Orion are all, web-based applications. Whatever, if I come on site, it's probably going to be slower for me to support you than if I do it remotely, right? Because remotely
Mhm.
I have access to my different monitors. I can look and I can quickly troubleshoot it. There is not, so to support you on something like Salesforce or Orion or even your email, there's no advantage for me being on site. If anything, there's a disadvantage because of the
Mhm.
travel time, right? Even if I am
Yeah.
local, right?
Yeah.
It's going to take me 30 minutes or an hour to get there. So because again, it's not running on that server in your office or, anything like that.
Mhm. Do
So,
you see a lot in your line of business where you do have to change a mindset where, like you said, the 10 to 20% who just need that security blanket of somebody on site with them? Are you finding you're having to change that mindset pretty regularly, or once that person is in that mindset, there's no way that they're getting out of it kind of deal?
yeah, well, it's really changed after the pandemic. It's really, really
Mm,
interesting because what's happened is people, went from working in the office to working at home, and they became very comfortable with, oh, wow, you know what, remote support. Plus, they didn't even want the technician to be on site during the pandemic, right? Like, no, 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 support me remotely. So after the
mhm,
pandemic, that's totally shifted. And the way advisors relate to this is they were doing, RIAs were doing a lot of their meetings with clients in person. And now they're doing so many of them over Zoom and over, online video. And even
mhm,
their own clients are like, they might be like 30 minutes away. They're like, hey, let's just, it's more convenient, right? You don't have to waste time to come into the office and stuff like that. So that mind shift has really shifted. Now, where it's hard for us is if so, and I mentioned that briefly to you, is if somebody is in Milwaukee, for example, right, and they're like, hey, listen,
mhm,
we only support a local economy, and so we're going to only work with a local company. Well,
mhm.
that's fine. We're not physically in Milwaukee, but then again, neither is Orion or Wealthbox or Salesforce, right? And so,
Right.
for us, we feel like we're just very specialized with RIAs. But there is occasionally where they say, no, we like it's a business decision that we need to work with somebody that's local. And yeah, I mean, I respect that, I appreciate it, and we don't. But most people in this space fundamentally understand that, oh yeah, I don't, in order for you to help me, I don't need you to jump in a car and drive 20 minutes and be physically in my office. You can do it remote. And again, the crazy part is even the people that are working with that local IT company, it's very rare that that IT person ever comes on
Gonna
site.
get up.
The
Yeah.
last 2 years, he has not been on site.
Yeah. So how often would somebody, can we, if I needed someone, on site, how often could I expect them to be on site? To the point
Are you
here of,
asking like about us or in general?
I guess just in general, like, if I did want on-site support, someone to be
Yeah.
at our office, how much, how much would I expect them to be there? Like, like we're just talking about here, a local person, they could be down the road just a block away, but they're still not coming in because they're
Yeah.
just gonna, do it from there. So even if I get an on-site support person, whether we'll start with your business, but
Sure.
if it's somebody else's business too, should I expect them or set the expectation I want you here 2 times a week? Or is it just like, an hour a week kind of deal?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so you're asking a really good question. The really important thing is the old way of thinking about things is like, oh, they were checking our systems when he comes on site, right? And he's coming on site once a week to check the systems. Now we're checking the systems continuously, right? 24/7 every day, because we have an agent on the computer. It alerts us. We know what's going on. We look at that, right? So we're kind of we're monitoring the system on a regular basis. We're not waiting once a week to like, oh yeah, let's go check out the systems, right? We know in real time, what's going on with those systems. Um, here's what I'm going to tell you. The cadence. If you are 20 and less employees, these companies are very comfortable with having it all remote. That's
Mm.
just sort of the mindset, right? Certain companies with 20 plus employees, they actually like to have somebody in there. And that's why we have the cadence of twice a month for a half a day. So every basically think of it as that again, that first and third Tuesday of every month from 8 to 12, right? They like to have Todd, the IT person, there for a combination of different reasons. That would be the cadence. 5 years ago before the pandemic, certain companies like that to be like a half a day once a week, right? But
Yeah.
everybody's sort of moved away from that. And so that's why we have a plan where we can have Todd, our IT person, in your office physically twice a month for a half a day. And that seems to be work really well. But again, that's for companies typically with 20 plus employees that want to have somebody that's on site. The other piece that we see a lot is there's typically somebody on site, an employee that's very focused on the software applications, right? Like, how do I better use Orion or Wealthbox, right? So they're actually quote unquote in IT, but they're very focused on the software, but they know a little bit about hardware, and they can sort of alleviate and go plug in the projector in the conference room and stuff like that. So we see that quite a bit.
So how much would that is it, I guess, what's the differential cost here? Like, am I going to look to pay like a lot of more money for that security if I have someone on site, or is it about the same?
Yeah, no, it's a bump. It's a bump in price, right? So
Hmm.
forget us for a second. Even if you're talking to like a local IT provider and you
Hmm.
want somebody that's physically there, there's typically a significant bump in price because it's pretty inefficient for them to have somebody there, right? Now,
Hmm.
from our perspective, the monthly bump in price is $1,200. As of right now, that's what that is, right? I don't know. Don't hold it to us if you're listening to this in 2 years from now. Um, we haven't changed it for a while, so I imagine it would be pretty close. But we present our prospects and our clients with two options, right? Option one and option two. Over 90% of the time, they go with option one without the on-site component.
Hmm.
Because it's for two reasons, right? They feel like they don't need it, which I agree with. And then B, they're like, man, that's just, a lot of money, and
Hmm.
we'd spend that elsewhere. So yeah, I tend to be very transparent with pricing because I don't like to waste, the
Yeah.
prospect's time or my time. We're like, hey,
Right.
here's what it is. If you want to do it, great. There's a cost
Yeah.
associated with that. So
And so you guys do offer on-site support. So let me ask you, have you ever had a situation where it's the company's like, hey, we've got a local guy here, but we want you to work with the local IT guy. Do you guys typically do that? Or is that something where it's like, not really, just because we haven't trained that person, we don't know what their skill set is, and it's a liability kind of deal? Or
we will, but we have to vet them out, especially from a
yeah.
security perspective, right? So that's just something that we'll look at that, but we definitely need to vet them out because we're just that's at the end of the day, we feel like the buck stops with us. And
Hmm.
if we've got somebody, they might think that Todd knows what he's doing, but Todd's clueless, right? Todd might know more than the RIA, right? But when we
Yeah.
talk to Todd, we're like, oh my goodness, this Todd
Sounds
guy.
like my dad. He's like, why am I paying this person? I can just do it. I've listened to Kim Commando forever, so I know how this works. And he's always like, I'm smarter than that guy. I could make just as much as he could. So
Yeah,
no, totally,
yeah.
totally makes sense. So the big takeaway for when it comes to remote on-site support, what's the big thing that you want someone to walk away with here, David? The big takeaway, I kind of know what it is. It's kind of like on-site support may not be the best option for you right now, depending on your size. But what's your final thought here?
Yeah, so I think what you really want to look at, I think what you really want to look at, whether it's on-site or whether it's remote or anything like that, is does that IT provider, does that IT partner have other RIA clients, and does he have knowledge of the RIA industry and knows how to support other RIAs, right? Because I
Mm-hmm.
don't get too hung up on remote versus on site, because for me, it's like we do it. Here's how we do it. It makes sense. Typically what happens is, a new RIA, the breakaway RIA, they start, right? They work with a local IT provider. Within 1 to 2 years, they're reaching out to us because they're frustrated with their local IT provider for two reasons. One, just slow response slash bad customer service. Because
Yeah.
again, you're small at 5 employees, but your requirements for cybersecurity is big. So, slow response times, customer service issues. And the other thing is just not understanding unique challenges of an RIA. And
Yeah.
so it generally, I mean, I know the progression. Todd goes and starts his RIA. He works with a local IT partner in the Austin market. Within
Right.
2 years, you're frustrated, you reach out to us and we talk, and then we
Yeah.
end up working for a very long time. So I think it's like, hey, whoever you're working with, whether they're local or not, do they understand the unique IT compliance requirements of an RIA? Do
Yeah.
they
And do
know
you
that?
want to take that chance too of saying, I'll give them a chance to figure it out? Do you really want that to be the thing you want to, have them test out on?
Yeah. So my experience, Todd, it's almost like this third secret language. They're like, oh my goodness, we're talking to RIA workspace, and they know what red tail is, or they know what
Oh,
Orion
yeah.
is, and they're like,
Yeah.
the local person has no idea what that is. And they know that we need to have email archiving and journaling.
Yeah.
I don't have to explain it, so
Yeah.
it's like this handshake that they just
Yeah.
say, oh wow, he's got, it's like
Yeah.
when you meet a friend that you've known for a long time but you haven't seen him, right? You're like,
That's
oh my
right.
goodness, where have you been?
Yeah.
So that's typically what my calls are like, and so I enjoy it. They're a lot of
Yeah.
fun.
We know your business, so you can do your business. That's kind of how RA works, right? We know how to talk the language. So, well, hey, David, it's great chatting with you, and I think if anybody, these frequently asked questions, we do have them on the website riaworkspace.com. Just go and search the resources, and specifically the title "Remote versus On-Site IT Support: Making the Right Choice for Your RIA," because that's what we talked about today. And so we've got all those questions and also some really helpful graphs at the bottom of the blog post to really kind of help you make that decision a bit easier. So, hey, look, that's the end of our episode today. We want to thank, as always, David for joining us here today, and you for listening in. Hey, do us a favor and hit that like and subscribe button. It really does help us out. And also, visit us on the web, riaworkspace.com. And thanks again for listening to the RIA Tech Talk Podcast. Feel free to reach out to us anytime, whether it's in the notes or email. We'd love to hear from you. And stay tuned for more RIA Tech Insights in our next episode. We'll see you then.